The Shaykh is a guest of mine. He wants to show him the history. So he's the, what do they call them?
Tour guide.
Tour guide. I think there's a special word for that.
Yes, museum educator.
Museum educator. Right. Thank you.
Should we put this on?
Put it so they can record it. Right. Don't stay too far away from the camera.
No,
it's automatic.
Yeah. Conan to phone. Conan is a phone. Highlights. I want to point out our national coat of arms.
Yeah.
That's our national coat of arms.
Freedom and justice.
Yes, freedom.
If you speak aloud, so can
I just wanted to point out this word. About how many minutes or hours you have?
Oh, 30 minutes. 30 minutes for you.
All right.
Nana? I salute you, sir. Well, yes, sir. Your museum educator was just. Okay, thank you very much. Yes, sir. Yes, sir. Thank you, sir. Thank you very much.
I said, look what? Come on, where is it? You're welcome.
Thank you.
Very good. So this is a Cape Coast Castle that has attracted so many people around the world to come and have a look at and to listen to the history of Ghana and Cape Coast. It was started by the Swedish in around 1654, and initially it was built with timber, but the year after they replaced it with stones and mud, and they called it Fort Carolsberg. It was named after King Charles X of Sweden. Yes, and it's changed hands several times between the Swedish, the Danes, the Dutch, and finally the English. Captured it in 1664 and developed it into this edifice as we have today. And it was used mainly as a trading post, trading in gold, ivory, spices, and slaves. Also some guns, gunpowder, second-hand clothes, blankets, and many things were brought from Europe, which were used in the exchange for the local African products. And much later in years, it served as a point where certain European ideas were introduced, talking of Christianity, formal education, and some state institutions developed from this castle. So this castle has functioned in diverse ways, both positive and negative, in the social, economic, and political development of this country. And in the course of the tour, I will be discussing some of these issues with you. But the main focus of our discussion will be on the transatlantic slave trade, which made this castle very famous, and for which reason UNESCO has designated it as a World Heritage Site.
When it was designated?
1992, yes. For the role it played in the transatlantic slave trade and also in laying the foundations of the present-day international trading systems of the world.
It's big, it's huge.
Yes. So to this edifice, you are warmly welcome. Very good. May we... Hey, Isaac, come here, mean some. It means some photographer, no much, and after photographers, no much. 2 pictures and 3 pictures. Yeah. Right. So this dungeon was constructed around 1792. And it was designed for 1,000 people. But as the trade went on, it was taking about 1,500 people and even more. Right? We will go in and see how they survived in the dungeons. It's about 3 steps to the last floor, which is slopey. It's not slippery, but it's more advisable to walk on the left. So.
Please. The right is better than the left. It's better to come to the right.
He's on the right already? Right.
Okay.
This one? So please cross to the wall here. Cross to the wall. Please come to this way. Come this way. And then let's go down briefly.
Be careful, the left is slippery. The left is slippery. Don't go to the left. Don't go to the left.
Okay, let's stay here. I'll make a presentation here briefly for you. Excuse me. All right. So I will briefly put up the lights. You see, this was the condition in the dungeon. There were no lights. So the whole up there provided them with lights and ventilation. And they stayed here for about 3 months on the average. And whilst they were here, they urinated, they defecated, they vomited, they ate, and they slept here. You see, occasionally they were let out to be fed, and also to crack stones with cannonballs that were used in building the castle.
Yeah.
Right. And from the top there, a soldier supervised them. Sometimes when the captives were in angry mood, food was thrown in from there. So they struggled for it here in their physics. Water came in as well. They cupped their hands to drink or suck each other's hair for water. Yes. Now there's another small hole up there. Very small one.
Where?
Under this pillar. Here.
Oh, okay.
You see it? Very good. Now that was used by the domestic slaves. These were those who were sick, those who were weak, those who were maimed and not strong enough to survive in the dungeons. They were used as servants in the castle. They fetched firewood, fetched water, washed the clothes of the officials, and did all the odd jobs. But some hid in there and listened to the conversations in the dungeon to know if there were plots of escapes, if there were plots of rebellions or revolts. And those who were implicated were kept separately here. Very good.
This was the punishment.
Yes. So this served as a dungeon for the troublemakers. Those whom we may refer to as the freedom fighters. This room can take about 200 people. But they were chained here to the walls. I see the holes on the wall. They were chained to it. See. And the channel on the floor runs through the middle of the dungeon to the exit. Served as a drainage for their feces and urine. See, when it rains, depending on the direction of the wind, water came in through these holes to wash the floor. See, but the whole place got covered with filth, and many of them got sick and died here. Right? An excavation here revealed bones, shackles, branding instruments, and some ropes. Some parts of the earth were tested. They contained blood, flesh, feces, and many of such. Right? Just behind you here, it's a portion of the coverings on the floor. See, this piece is made up of human excrement, blood, decomposed bodies, clothes that were left here, compacted over years. See. And that is what you have been working on since you entered the dungeon. That's what you have been working on. See. It's often said that walls have ears, they don't have mouth. Otherwise, these walls would have told us what happened here. They have been witnesses to these inhuman treatments for years. And,
So this goes all the way down?
All the way through the rest of the dungeon to the exit.
thank you.
You like that?
Just training this morning. What? Training this morning. Training.
We have to enter a religious site, so I announce our presence. Now, everybody. All right, what we are standing before now is a shrine. We believe in worshiping Supreme Being through natural phenomenon. So certain trees, certain rivers, mountains, and some stones are believed to have spirits behind them. And through these spirits, we communicate with the Supreme Being, who was considered too pious to be approached directly by us sinful men. See? That's why in a traditional setup, one cannot approach an elderly person or a chief directly. You have to go through a linguist. So these gods served as linguists between man and God. There are many of them. In Cape Coast alone, there are about 77 official gods. This is one of them. Call him Nana Tabir. He was here before they started constructing this castle. Yes. But through persuasions and force, the people were prevented from coming here to worship. So they performed rituals and removed the spirits from here to the center of the town until 1973, when rituals were again performed and he was brought back. That's why we find a shrine here in the middle of a dungeon. No, it's a spirit. Oh. It's a spirit. But rituals are performed here. Normally, rituals are performed here almost every day.
Yeah. I ask because in the north, some such gods are seen like crocodiles. Right?
Yes, these crocodiles are seen to be the physical representation of the gods that are spiritual. The gods are spiritual, but they are believed to be residing, or through these elements we can see them and then interact with them. In the same north, there are some people also eat crocodiles.
Yeah, I do.
So you are not eating the gods.
No. Renovation for the past 100 or so.
Renovation?
Yeah.
There have been preservation, not renovation.
Yes, sir, preservation.
There have been preservation. That's why this building is still standing. We continue to preserve it every year.
Okay.
All right. So this part of the dungeon was used as a sorting room, where they sorted out the captives. It was a dungeon as well. But when the captives were ready to leave and their ships arrived, they sorted the captives here to know which belongs to who. Right? And behind this wall, there was a tunnel through which the captives were led to the exit.
They were branded.
They were branded, yes. They were branded in the Palava Hall. But they were branded to identify. That's why they were able to sort them out to know which belongs to who. So they were led through the tunnel to the exit. Right, to the door of no return. We will go through it, see how they were taken into their ships. But when the trade was abolished, the authorities realized that there were some merchants and officials who were secretly shipping captives through the dungeons. So the tunnel was sealed to stop that illegal trading activity here, right? And the walls have been dedicated to the souls of our ancestors who passed through these dungeons as a result of the transatlantic slave trade. And researchers have come up with different figures regarding the number of people who arrived alive, about 10, 15, 20, 30 to 100 million, etc. But none has been able to tell us about the number of people that died on the sea, the number of people that died in the castles like this, or on their way into the castles, and in the many battles and the raids to capture them. So you can imagine the number of people who were involved in a trade that lasted for over 400 years. And every year on the 31st of July, wreaths are laid here in their memory. Every year. 31st of July. Reverential night.
To remember that.
Then the chiefs, the politicians, and people from the diaspora all visit us here. We hold a vigil, a reverential night, and then wreaths are laid here in their memory.
Fatiha. بسم الله الرحمن الرحيم الحمد لله رب العالمين الرحمن الرحيم مالك يوم الدين إياك نعبد وإياك نستعين اهدنا الصراط المستقيم صراط الذين أنعمت عليهم غير المغضوب عليهم ولا الضالين. Inshallah for their soul. Too many.
I will continue.
Thank you.
You're welcome. In everlasting, this was placed there by the traditional authorities.
Here.
Yes, to serve as a reminder that never should we allow the kind of inhumanities in the dungeons to be perpetrated again, not only to black people, but all races of the world. And that's the message from this castle. But now on top of this was a church.
So they pray up, they
They
kill down.
prayed. On top of that was a church. The official English church sponsored a group of missionaries here, called them Society for the Propagation of the Gospel. We had to teach boys how to read and write, take care of the spiritual welfare of the merchants and the traders. But because of the high death rates among Europeans, which affected the missionaries, they decided to send boys from here to England to study. So they will come back and teach their own people. Initially, 3 boys were sent, but 2 of them also died in England. Only one survived and came back. And he worked there for about 50 years. When he died, he was buried just behind us here. Let's get closer to him.
What's your period? Yamana, what did you show?
Yeah, museum, you have a museum. But you may say that for sure. Aye.
Okay.
Aye, nah.
The film is in a party. So the name was Reverend Philip Kweku. Reverend Philip Kweku. He was born on a Wednesday, so he was called Kweku. But as happened to some of our names and institutions, these were anglicized. So Kweku became Kweku. I told him Kweku. I told him my own name was Blankson. That's an anglicized African name. Comes from Kuntu, meaning blanket. Kuntu, blanket. So blanket's son became Blankson.
But you don't need a blanket here.
I don't need a blanket here. That's true. We don't need a blanket here. We don't need a blanket here.
His name is an Akan name. It has a meaning.
Yeah.
Kuntu is cover, something you use to cover yourself. Like the English
It's hot here.
It's hot here, so you don't need a blanket.
Yeah, but
when the weather is 21 degrees, you see people wearing sweaters in Kekos.
Not only in Cape Coast, in Ghana. Kitakente. Yes, changed. They tried to change the name. Yeah. So, yeah, different person. So, Philip Kweku was sent to England in around 1754, came back in 1766, and helped open a lot of schools along the coast. And also, through his influence, other missionaries set up high schools. So, by the time of his death till today, Cape Coast has been known as the citadel of education.
True.
Yes. He died in 1816. at the age of 75.
The first school was established in Cape Coast. Philip Kwaku Boys.
Yes. Philip Kwaku, named after him. Castle schools, then Philip Kwaku Boys, and then other higher institutions. Infantipim, Kofi Annan, who attended school here. Most of the prominent people in Ghana you have heard out there. Infantipim?
No. I came for an excursion.
Excursion.
To Cape Coast.
To Cape Coast.
From Zabzugo Middle School.
Okay. You're welcome. Right, may we see that?
When there were only 2 sixth form schools in the whole of the half of the physical half of Ghana, there were 10 sixth form schools in Cape Coast alone. 10 sixth form schools.
That's the grave of Captain George McLean. He was a Scottish. He died here in 1847. He was responsible for the colonization of the Gold Coast. He realized when he came here, the slave trade was being abolished. So he realized that to make profits from the rest of the trade, he needed a cooperation from the local people. So he took his time to study their customs and culture and gain their trust so much that when they had problems, they came to him. And up there, in McLean's Hall, a hall that has been named after him, he sat in consultation with the chiefs and people and settled their disputes according to their own tradition. So one day he suggested to them, why don't we sign a peace agreement with the British so they protect us against some of our local rivals? They did. And that translated into what became known as the Bond of 1844. That ushered us into colonial administration. So he was a protectorate. So he was the architect of the colonial rule in the Gold Coast. This was his wife. She died barely 3 months after she arrived here because the husband was seen to be having an extra affair with a black mistress in town. So the poor lady could not stand competition from the local women, took overdose of her medicine. That was a controversy that developed as well, that he probably killed her.
Oh. Well, was he not a Muslim?
No, McLean is
that was a mistake. He should have been a Muslim.
Is he?
Married 4 wives.
Yes, he could have legally done that. And that's a soldier. We call him C.B. Whitehead. C.B. Whitehead also died here in 1812. Well, you don't know what killed him, but like most of his compatriots who came here died of certain tropical diseases, such as malaria. And they believed that when they had malaria and they took alcohol, they will be cured. So a young soldier arrives here, got malaria, and quaffed about 3 bottles of brandy or schnapps or whiskey and died.
Alcohol poisoning.
Yes, alcohol poisoning. So apart from these 3 people, there are a lot of people buried here. Lots of soldiers, missionaries. The death rate was so high that West Africa was called White Man's Grave. The White Man's Grave. These are examples of some of the graves. This way.
Was there ever any chance that slaves arrived here and escaped?
Oh, there are instances of people escaping from here. Yes. Well, in the first place, as we look at the castle now, we may think that it was perfected before the slave trade began. But it took a period of about 300 years to develop it, while the slave trade was going on. You see. So there are lots of loopholes and activities that could get them out of here.
So most of the slaves that went from here, did they go to South America or North America?
To South America.
To Brazil?
Most captives were taken to Brazil, controlled by the Dutch and the Portuguese. Right. But most other English captives were sent to the Spanish colonies and the English colonies in America, meaning the South Carolinas. And
so most of the African Americans then were sent up from South America to the
north.
So they didn't come directly most.
No, there were instances of them, some going, but most of them went to the south before they were sent to the north. There were chains of distribution.
Where is it, the cave of no return?
It's down here. It's going this way. We are going going to walk here and then go down.
أشهد أن محمدا رسول الله أشهد أن محمدا رسول الله حي على الصلاة حي على الصلاة حي على الفلاح حي على الفلاح الله أكبر الله أكبر لا إله إلا الله الصلاة والسلام عليك يا من أرسله الله تعالى رحمة للعالمين الصلاة والسلام عليك وعلى آلك وأصحابك أجمعين الصلاة والسلام عليكم يا أنبياء الله
اللهم ربنا رب هذه الدعوة التامة والصلاة القائمة آت سيدنا محمدا الوسيلة والفضيلة والدرجة الرفيعة العالية وابعثه اللهم يا رب مقام محمود الذي وعدته إنك لا تخلف الميعاد وارزقنا شفاعته يوم القيامة.
Pictures alone here in the background. Demande, can you take a couple of pictures of Mawlana alone with this background?
Thank you. You're welcome. So now we are walking on top of the tunnel that has been sealed in the male dungeon. This is what we are walking on now. And these guns were mounted on it to defend the castle against pirates and other nationals who tried to capture it. Because the trade here was very lucrative. And merchants who traded here had to pay a percentage of their profits. So there have been several battles here for the control of the castle between European powers. See, this castle has a direct history with New York. Yes. New York was a Dutch colony captured by the English in 1664. Yes, they left them here.
Very heavy, huh?
Very heavy.
It's heavy.
Yeah. Very heavy.
Want to try it?
Yes. Did they fill them up with something? Because I see some of them have like...
Some of them have holes that were filled with gunpowder, so that when they hit the target, they explode, setting the target ablaze. Maybe go this way, please. Yeah. Now we're about to look into the tunnel from the male dungeon, the tunnel that is sealed in the male dungeon. A soldier stood here to supervise them as they moved along.
Very deep.
And all these were warehouses for incoming goods and the outgoing ones. Guns, gunpowders, and many things that were brought in here were kept there. Also gold, ivory, spices, and many things that were being shipped out along with the captives were kept there. Now this was the end of the tunnel. The tunnel, this part is also sealed, and the space used as a warehouse. So when they came out through this door, which was very small, it allowed one person out at a time. So when they stepped out, they were chained. They waited in line till they got a sizable group Then they were marched through that door. So that door became known as the door of no return, because anyone who went through it was not expected to come back. Yes. We will go through it, but we will come back. We will come back. We will come back. Your Excellency, this was a cell for the female captives who resisted the sexual advances from the soldiers and the officials. They were kept here.
How many?
About 20 people.
Votes for you?
We are now in the female dungeons.
Okay.
We are now in the women dungeons. These dungeons held between 500 and 800 women and children. So, yes.
If a woman had a child here, you are just part of this.
Yes, but the average age was between 13 and 30. So from 10 to 40, 45 were all taken. See, even old men with gray hair were shaven and they were polished with palm oil to make them look strong and healthy. See, that's why in books you see black people shining. In books they put oil to make them look strong. Let's visit one of the dungeons here.
Are males allowed?
Males are allowed this time.
But why did you people remove the shackles from the walls?
Yes, we have to. We need to preserve them. Because if they were here, the salty nature of the atmosphere will rust it. So we put them somewhere. Otherwise, if you are not here, somebody can also move them off. You see. So this was one of the dungeons where they kept the women. And they lived there in the same conditions as the men. Probably worse than what we experienced in a male dungeon. See. But one significant thing here was this door that is sealed. Through it, the merchants, the officials, the soldiers came to select the women, they washed them, and then abused them. And after, brought them back. And those who were found to be pregnant in the castles were taken out. There were stone houses with hired mistresses who took care of them.
You explained this to Obama?
Yes, I did. Yes.
What he said?
It was sad. Most of the time he was quiet.
Yeah.
See, those who were sick, those who were found to be pregnant on the ships were thrown into the sea. Because no one bought a pregnant slave. Those who were sick and considered weak that they would not be able to make the journey were also thrown in. The dead followed up. So there were sharks following the ships that were feeding on them. See, and when there was a food shortage on board the ships, the sharks were then trapped to feed the captives on the ships.
They would use them as bait?
Yes. So the sharks that followed the ships feeding on the dropouts were later trapped. So if you came here with your wife or sister, you slept in different dungeons. In the night, a soldier came for your wife or your sister, raped her, or your daughter. If she was found pregnant on a ship, she went into the sea. And the shark that ate her up was later trapped to feed you. These are some of the inhuman activities associated with the transatlantic slave trade. Of course, slavery have existed in almost every human society. Step up, please. Fishing, yes, fishing harbor. So when they came out, they were loaded into canoes like this and taken into the ships. So this was done mainly in the night so that the residents would not see what was happening. Though they knew, they also anticipated escapes. So the whole harbor was walled up to the wharf. From the wharf to this castle was a restricted area called the European Beach. So, yes. This served as the official entrance into the castle. And in front of it, we may describe it as the arrival and departure lounge. Between the harbor and the ships, one of them might have decided not to go. So he will just jump into the ocean, pulling the rest with him, and they will all drown here. So either they wanted to escape or just to commit suicide. So you can imagine a morning after departure here, bodies floating with chains around them. From here they were taken to the Americas, the Caribbeans, and the West Indies. Across the Atlantic, one captain who was given an evidence before a fact-finding commission was asked, how comfortable are the captives on board the ships? His reply was, they are as comfortable as you may feel in your coffin. And the ships were described as floating coffins. They were made to lie naked on planks or wood. Occasionally they let them out and caned them to dance for exercise, called a dancing by the whip. Those who survived were sold to plantation owners and the miners who used them on the farms and the mines. And of course, the proceeds went into building America and Europe. So, this is now a fishing harbor. And fishing is the backbone of the local economy.
What we can say.
But now we have the door of return. We have the door of return. In 1998, 2 bodies of ex-slaves were exhumed in America and Jamaica. They were brought back through this door to reverse the trend of no return, so that the descendants of the survivors, like my brother, will come back. Not necessarily through this door, but through Ghana as a gateway to West Africa. You're welcome. You are welcome.
He married here also.
Oh, okay, good luck. Huh?
So I've really returned.
You have really returned.
So important.
Come, push. Hey, push.
اللهم صل على سيدنا محمد النبي الأمي وعلى آله وصحبه وسلم اللهم صل على سيدنا محمد النبي وعلى
All right, so we are going here. Yes. Please be mindful of your head.
Tu as envie de faire le même.
This was a cell for those who persistently tried to escape. Those who escaped and were rearrested, and those who were violent. They were kept here without food, water, air, or light. So they stayed here until they died. Yes, they stayed here until they died. And they were packed into bags. They brought men from the male dungeon to pack them into bags and were thrown into the ocean. Yes, this was a condemned cell. If you are brought here, you have no life.
That really was the door of no return.
Room of no return. Please, let's be mindful of the head as we go out.
I think they have to take these politicians or these governments that they were working in this transatlantic trade to The Hague.
Yes.
Send them to the court.
So now we'll climb the steps and go to the museum and see some of the artifacts we have on display.
Okay, and that's it?
That's it.
Do you have a good restaurant in town?
Yes.
Which one is that?
I'm coming. Let me think of
Okay,
one good for.
while you are.
Yeah.
We are building a new cell.
All these were warehouses. For the gold, many things that they carried with them, along with the slaves to the America.
You're welcome.
Thank you.
So this was a gate we
It's allowed to take pictures?
Yes. That's a gate we took pictures from. We went the door of no return. And these are the activities that were carried out there.
So these pictures were
these were drawings
drawn before,
yes.
at that time.
Around that time, artists, let's say merchants who arrived here just sat on their ships and then draw acts of what's going on around them. So these were captured from the scenes from that period. It will be good if you stay back. Please don't cross me.
No, never mind.
I know, but
it's okay.
I know it's okay, but I want it to flow, not to cross. Flow with us. Flow with us. Don't cross me, please. These are early Stone Age technology used by the people to sharpen, to fish, to farm, to cut, things like that. These are iron, from Stone Age to iron. And these are terracotta figurines, images of important people that are molded in clays for posterity to remember the deeds of people that were done. These are terracotta figurines. And early trade and market is how people went fishing. There are small boats, in small numbers, and the fish for the community. This depicts a market of local people.
So they come here and they try to kidnap this.
Yes, this was the society before the Europeans arrived. Going about doing our normal business of fishing, of selling, of trading, and doing our normal business. And then Europeans arrived. But one of the things that attracted them was gold. gold. Used to have alluvial mining. They dive, collect the materials, process them, and then sell them. This is what was trading between Africans and Arabs across the Mediterranean and the Sahara. And when Europeans got knowledge of the gold, they decided to come and take the gold trade away from the Arabs, and then ended up with the slave trade. So these elements of the gold activities used, and the artistic nature tells us of the developments of the trade. This is Henry the Navigator, the man who inspired European sailors to explore the west coast of Africa and came up with the Elmina Castle. There's an image of the Elmina Castle, and that's an image of the Elmina Castle in the ocean.
Elmina.
Elmina. That's the first.
Elmina.
Elmina.
Elmina in Arabic.
It means
the beach.
The beach, or harbor.
Yeah, the harbor.
Yes. And in Portuguese, it means the mine. The mine. This is George McLean. The George McLean, the man buried here who made the bond. Yes, the treaty. These are some of the trade goods that came with the Europeans. Most of them were alcohol. See, and tobacco, many glass, European trade wares, etc. But principally, they were using guns and knives. These were used in the exchange for the slaves. For the slaves. And these are the forts and castles, the number of forts and castles along the coast of Ghana alone. Forts and castles along the coast of Ghana alone. There's a Cape Coast Castle, and there's also the Cape Coast Castle, how it began. Small forts and then expanded. This expanded from. So we have the slaves or the captives as they walked in from the interior after they have been captured in their communities. And some of them were blacksmiths, some of them were goldsmiths, some of them were community leaders, linguists, traditional leaders who were captured in wars and brought down to the coast and exchanged, sold for guns and gunpowders, alcohol, tobacco, and many of things. These are some of the branding, the shackles, chains that were used on them when they arrived, particularly in the castles. This was a branding rod. See, this was put in fire to make red. Then they smeared the upper right arm here with palm oil or the breast. Then they put it. So they have JSS, John Smith Slave, printed there. And then taken to the dungeons to wait for the ships. So, and this the trade, this is how it's going on. This gentleman is being examined by this doctor. And this is the boss. He sits down with his loyal black servants. Some of the traders were doing the marketing, and this man is doing the whipping. Others are also waiting to be sold. And over here, we have a map of showing the distribution of the slaves. Most of them were taken. So the pinker, the more the color deepens, then the intensity of it. So as the demand in the Americas and the Caribbean went higher, then the further it went into the interior. So initially it was remaining along the coast, but then it went further inland. And you can see captives were taken from all these parts, even as far back as Mozambique, and taken to the Americas, the Caribbean, and the West Indies. And then sugar, coffee, cotton, tobacco were taken from the plantations to Europe. This went into the process and then came to Africa in cheap jewelry and weapons. That's why the economy of Africa is dependent on imported goods. We're going this way. So you are welcome on board the slave ship. This was the condition in which they traveled. So the condition in which they traveled.
There is something I have observed on this man's neck.
It's a chain that we saw out there.
You put it.
Yes.
Like a leash.
Like a leash.
A leash.
So you see, this man is here inside the ship checking how many of them are dead, how many of them are sick, how many do you have to throw away. So that's what they do. They come through trapdoors like this, which is here. You see? So when they leave, everything is like that. The men were on the shelf and the women were up here, as seen here. So these are the men and these are the women. And you can see the proportion or ratio of 3 to 1. So that's 3 men to 1 man. 3 men to 1 woman. That was a ratio, right? So this is technically how they were arranged and taken away.